Welcome to This Explainer. Let's get right into it. Imagine holding a $20 bill up to the light. What are you actually seeing there? Honestly, it's just a piece of specially treated paper. It costs mere pennies to manufacture. Yet, if you walk into pretty much any store, hand it to the cashier, and walk out with your groceries or a coffee, absolutely no one bats an eye. We all just accept it without a second thought. So we really have to ask ourselves a fundamental question. What actually makes that little piece of paper worth anything at all? To truly grasp personal finance and economics, we first need to completely shatter the illusion of what money actually is. It's not magic, and it doesn't have any inherent value. It's built on a very specific, invisible foundation. And understanding how that works is literally one of the most critical lessons you can learn. Part 1. The Pillars of Value: Law and Social Trust. The most straightforward answer to why your money has value is simply because the government says it does. U.S. currency is declared legal tender. Now, there's a super fascinating real-world distinction here. A shop owner can actually refuse to accept your $100 bill for a brand new purchase because private businesses can set their own policies. But a creditor cannot legally refuse U.S. dollars for a debt that already exists. So if you owe someone $500 and hand them $500 bills, that debt is legally wiped out whether they like it or not. The full authority of the state stands right behind it, guaranteeing you can use it. But look, beyond a whole force of law thing, the system relies entirely on something way more fragile, and that is trust. Money is essentially a massive, simultaneous social contract. You only accept that $20 bill because you deeply believe the grocery store is going to accept it from you tomorrow. And that grocery store, they only take it because they believe they can use it to pay their employees and their suppliers. It's an entire shared belief system. If people stop believing the money will hold its value, the whole thing unravels, totally regardless of what the law says. The catch is, you can't just snap your fingers and mandate trust. It has to be painstakingly built over time. How do we do that? Basically through 3 key elements. First is stability, meaning your money roughly holds its value from one year to the next. Second is institutional credibility, which means the government and the central bank are managing the money supply responsibly. And third is economic strength, meaning the currency is backed by a massive, highly productive economy with functioning laws. If any one of these pillars starts to wobble, trust begins to fracture. Part 2. The Invisible Thief: Inflation. Now, here's the catch. Even in a highly trusted, fully functioning system, your money is constantly, slowly leaking value. We're talking about the invisible thief known as inflation. To understand this leak, we first have to talk about purchasing power. This represents what your dollars can literally get you out in the real world, the actual quantity of goods and services. See, true wealth isn't about how many physical bills are sitting in your wallet. It's about what those bills can actually acquire for you. When inflation rises, your purchasing power drops. Let's make this perfectly concrete. Think about a standard slice of pizza. Back in 2010, that slice cost you exactly $2. Today, let's say that exact same slice of pizza costs $3.50. Your physical dollar bill didn't change size. The ink is the same, the paper is the same, but your ability to buy that pizza with a given amount of money shrank. You literally need more paper to get the exact same amount of food. That right there is inflation silently eroding your wealth. And the math proves exactly why hoarding cash under a mattress, what we call the cookie jar trap, is a guaranteed losing game in the long run. Let's say inflation averages about 3% per year. You stash $1,000 in a jar today. By year 5, its real purchasing power has dropped to $862. By year 10, your $1,000 shrinks to a purchasing power of just $737. The physical bills are still sitting there, sure, but nearly a quarter of your wealth has vanished into thin air. You absolutely have to make your money grow at a rate that outpaces this invisible thief. Part 3, the nightmares scenario: hyperinflation. So what happens when governments totally break the rules, fiscal discipline vanishes, and trust completely evaporates? We enter the nightmare scenario. Economists define hyperinflation as prices rising so insanely fast that money loses virtually all of its value in months or even days. Let's look at one of history's most dramatic examples: Germany in 1923. After World War I, Germany owed these massive war reparations that they simply couldn't pay. So the government tried to solve the problem by just firing up the printing presses. The result was total collapse. A loaf of bread that cost 160 marks in 1922, it exploded to a mind-bending 200 billion marks by November 1923. Prices were quite literally doubling every few days. The situation got incredibly absurd. The currency was devaluing so rapidly that workers had to be paid twice a day. They'd rush straight from their jobs to spend their wages immediately because they knew the money would be worth significantly less by dinner time. It literally got to the point where families were burning their cash in their stoves just to stay warm. The physical paper of the banknotes was actually worth more as fuel than it was as currency. Fast forward to a much more modern example, Zimbabwe. Between 2007 and 2009, to cover rampant government spending, they kicked off a wave of reckless money printing. This triggered a catastrophic hyperinflation spiral that peaked at an estimated monthly inflation rate of 89.7 sextillion%. That is a number so massive, our brains literally can't even process it. In a completely dark, comedic twist, the Zimbabwe government eventually had to issue a single $100 trillion banknote. And the truly tragic part? That $100 trillion bill was worth less than a single US dollar at the time. Trust had completely 100% evaporated. Ultimately, the citizens completely abandoned their own currency, turning instead to US dollars and South African rand just to survive and do daily business. Part 4. Keeping your value stable. The protectors. All right, let's pull back to reality for a second. Those nightmare scenarios are exactly what modern monetary policy is designed to prevent. Let's take a look at the protectors working behind the scenes to keep our money stable. Here in the United States, our central bank is the Federal Reserve, or the Fed. They actively manage our money supply, acting kind of like a thermostat for the whole economy. Their absolute biggest tool is adjusting interest rates. If the economy runs too hot and inflation spikes, the Fed steps in and raises interest rates. That makes borrowing more expensive, which slows down spending and cools off prices. On the flip side, if the economy is slowing down dangerously, they'll lower rates to encourage borrowing and get things moving again. This kind of careful management brings us to a really profound point. You've probably wondered at some point, hey, why doesn't the government just print more money to pay for stuff? Well, printing money without a corresponding real-world growth in goods and services simply means you have more dollars chasing the exact same amount of stuff. It doesn't create wealth at all. It just drives prices up, redistributes purchasing power, and basically leaves everyone worse off. Now, you might be wondering, okay, if inflation is a thief, shouldn't the Fed just aim for exactly zero inflation? Actually, no. A tiny bit of inflation is considered a very good thing. The Fed specifically targets a modest, stable inflation rate of around 2% per year. Why? Because it acts as a gentle nudge. Knowing your money is going to lose a tiny bit of value encourages you to spend it or invest it, rather than just hoarding it in a safe. It keeps the money circulated, gives businesses breathing room to gradually raise wages, and keeps the whole economic engine humming along. Which brings us to our final and definitely most important takeaway. The math absolutely proves that keeping your money parked in a cookie jar guarantees you are going to lose wealth over time. The purchasing power of cash is literally designed to slowly melt away. So you really have to ask yourself a serious question as we wrap up this explainer. If cash always loses value, what is your money doing right now? Are you just letting it sit there and shrink, or are you putting it to work to beat the math? Think about it. See you next time.